The shores of Lake Como have seen many important stars come and go over the years. Casino Royale was filmed by its waters, as was Star Wars. But as important and honoured as they all are, none is quite as important as the machine paying it a visit today. The Alfa Romeo Tonale has a lot on its back. The future of an entire company, in fact.
Alfa Romeo does not sell many cars, and that's not just compared to its competitors. That's in general. Last year in the United Kingdom, they sold 1,574 cars in total in 12 months. And that's a shame, because what they do make, we're really rather fond of. Take the Giulia, which looks fantastic, or the Stelvio Quadrifoglio, which I have to admit is one of my favourite cars in the world. It's got a Ferrari-derived V6 and it feels like a big hot hatch. But neither of those cars sell in particular numbers, and Alfa Romeo has a new boss. And he comes with real pedigree. In 5 years as the boss of Peugeot, he took them from absolute also-rans in Europe to the second largest selling brand on the continent. And he tells us that if he manages to do it, he has plans for more cars. We might see things like a new Alfa Romeo Spider come back. And this mild hybrid is the start of it. But what you can't get around is that Alfa Romeo is yet again in the position where it's trying to save itself with a small SUV. Unfortunately, on the face of it, the Tonale's, it's not that interesting really, is it? It's got a 1.5 litre mild hybrid engine with, hold on to your hats, 160 horsepower, and it'll hit 60 miles an hour in 8.8 seconds. Whew. But thankfully, it's pretty. This is the new face of Alfa Romeo, and it's angrier, isn't it? It's like the Stelvio's naughty little brother that's been sent away. Those lights are thin and underneath this slightly clamshell bonnet, giving it a real angry look. And you can have the grille now in black if you wanted it to look even more furious. The side profile, well, it's a small SUV, isn't it? It's a blob. There's nothing else to it. At the back, it does look good again. It's now got the same as almost every car around, a full width rear light. But this one's a bit more interesting because they've included the details of the rear lights into it. But thankfully, there's a lot more to this than the fact that it's quite pretty. There's very interesting stuff about that mild hybrid technology. It is compact, and that means that rather than being in the boot, they've moved it and they've been able to put it between the front seats. It takes up 11 litres of space, and because this is front wheel drive, it doesn't need a transmission tunnel anymore. And that means they could put it there and it saves you 11 litres of boot space, and it only weighs 18 kilograms, despite the fact that it's actually able to move the car under its own power, which is quite rare for a mild hybrid system. So it is quite clever.
And that's not all the tech. There's torque vectoring and an electronic locking diff on the front axle for better stability, a variable geometry turbo for more consistent power delivery, and a system that helps balance regen and braking better, given the unfortunate initialism IBS.
And then there's the drivetrain, which 160 horsepower isn't massive, but it shouldn't be too bad, especially with that mild hybrid system. But connected to this 7-speed gearbox, which is quite sluggish, it's just doesn't provide anything, and you wait for this little mixture of turbo lag and it not kicking down that just leaves you waiting for any kind of power, which if you're on mountain roads like this that have lots of nice hairpins, just bogs you down into every single one. And if you buy this TI model that's the base, there's no paddles. You can change gear manually using the stick forward and backwards, but even then it doesn't really provide you with a massive amount of engagement because it feels so slow and middling. The chassis underneath, that actually feels quite good. The damping is very nice. It's got special frequency adapting dampers which change how they work depending on the frequency of the vibration coming through them. So in town they become softer and more compliant, and when you're on a smoother road like this, they'll firm up to give you more grip. That means that actually I think that if they made a Quadrifoglio and they really sharpened it up, it could be quite good. But this drivetrain is just really mediocre. The good thing is there's no roll, and actually one thing they have managed to sort is the brake feel. There's a system inside this that helps to manage to balance the actual physical kinetic braking with the regen. So this pedal is never one of those ones that you sometimes find in hybrids where you're never quite sure where the point is that you're going to change between regen and braking.
It would appear that the Tonale might at times be trying to be just a little bit too clever as a mild hybrid. It seems to struggle at times to decide how to use the power from its engine and batteries, especially out of a slow corner. It's sometimes a bit of a lottery whether you're going to be bogged down or given a fiesta of 4-cylinder revving as you floor it. It could be either. But hairpins aren't everywhere. The Tonale is much happier on a flowing road. There, the steering doesn't feel as ridiculously light and the chassis really comes into its own. The dampers are nicely tuned to cut out roll without leaving the car feeling numb, and when the transmission plays ball, the Tonale does actually have just a little of that Alfa fizz coming through.
The Tonale has received an update inside as well as outside. This is the all-new interior you'll find coming to every Alfa Romeo from now on, and it is, well, it's a lot of the same and a lot of different. Gone, thankfully, is controlling the screen by that awful rotating dial that used to be in the Stelvio and Giulia. Now it is entirely touchscreen and it's been moved quite a lot closer to you, so it's very easy to use. It's a really good system as well. It's not packed with features, but it does have Alexa, and it is very simple to use. Unlike a lot of Italian systems that you might find and ones they've had previously, you don't find yourself scrolling through menu after menu after menu just to find the thing that you want. It's all there presented nicely. And then behind that there's this beautiful piece of plastic that runs across the dash and has the ambient lighting. It's currently lit up red, which is very nice. Your phone sits there in its wireless charging cable, and you've got a proper actual gear knob here, which is always appreciated. The quality of materials is quite high. It's quite hard to find any scratchy plastics. The rest of it has been brought up. And that instrument binnacle is pure Alfa Romeo with its rounded clusters. And while it is now entirely digital, and in total there's 22 inches of screen in here, which leads its class, those dials have been made to look like the ones in the old Giulia Super or GT, and they look great. One final thing to mention, and hear me out here, because you're about to get either very angry or very excited, but let's just go through it. This is the first car to be sold that comes with an NFT. Now, never mind apes or John Terry or any of that, this is one that uses the technology potentially for good reasons. You see, the blockchain that's behind NFTs is a very good way of keeping a record of how things have been owned. And while it's only currently really being used to argue about who owns a JPEG on the internet, if you can build that into the ownership history of a car, it can tell you a lot about what you're buying. And that means that if you were to come and say buy a second-hand Alfa Romeo Tonale, you would have a register of everything you need to know about this car. It will tell you who owned it, how many miles it has done. It will tell you things like the life and quality of the battery at the stage that you buy it. Thing is, you do have to rely on everyone before you actually installing the app and making sure they do it. But if it works, it could be a game changer in the second-hand car market.
The Tonale isn't perfect, but being very good looking and nice to drive, it's extremely likeable. For £36,000, the tech is also impressive and shows that hopefully the switch to electrification won't ruin our love of Alfa Romeos. Around town, the ability to run in pure EV mode is welcome and very rare in a mild hybrid, and that light and very rapid steering is actually a bonus. There's 4 months before the Tonale arrives in the UK, and in that time the weight of it should be fixed, and that'll make it a very intriguing possibility.